Okay, perfect.
All right, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Actually, we have global representation on this call, which is always great, and we are back together for another effective virtual conversations call. These are, at least for fall 2017, a bi-weekly call that I'm doing as my new book, Effective Virtual Conversations, comes out into the world. They're short, they're sweet, they're only 30 minutes in length, and I want to thank you for joining me today. So today's topic, every time, is a little bit different. Today's all about getting ready to launch. And the frame of our conversation, of course, is helping you think about what are the things that you want to do as you get going with virtual programs. So I'm going to walk you through a quick pre-program checklist. I'm going to take you a little bit into some habits that you might want to think about forming. And if we have time, we'll start talking a little bit about first session, although in the virtual space today, some of you may be coaching, some of you may be training, some of you may be doing retreats for full days. So the first session might look a little bit different. And the notion is to get you thinking about what's going to work for you. So I hope that you have a pen. If you don't, we're recording, no worries. And just to let you know where these go, so these will be linked to effectivevirtualconversations.com. There is a community call page there. And what you will see is under the community call page, a growing body of new resources. So I started with these back in July with our launch call. In August, we covered engagement and platforms. So those that are interested in learning more about where do you host these calls? What does virtual facilitation look like? What are the differences and similarities? That took us into September, as did a call on activities to open and close virtual programs. And again, virtual programs can look very, very different. Again, we're on Zoom, but you might be in any given day hosting webinars, doing a conference call. Obviously, visually, those look and sound a little bit different. And very much we want to bring, as much as we can, people into the space. So I've got some people live here with me. I'll invite you throughout if you'd like. Just unmute yourself, ask questions, and or you can also use the chat function here on Zoom. And so I'll try to incorporate your questions. Our lens today, of course, is all about what you can do pre-programmed to give you better results. So I'm going to invite you just for a moment to think about what is that first impression you want to create. If you put some adjectives around your upcoming work with groups or teams in the virtual space, what's the first impression you want to create? Take 20 seconds right now to write that down. Top 3 adjectives on what's the first impression you want to create. I think we all have our own sort of go-to, what's comfortable, what gets us in the flow. You know, one thing that I've really loved sort of experimenting with a little bit more in the virtual space is more around visuals. And, you know, one of you or some of you on the call might be wondering, you know, where do I go? Where do I go to get some good images? Because you need to really respect intellectual property. Of course, with today's global village, we want to also make sure that we're crediting people as we can. I like to go, I have a subscription now through Adobe Stock, and so every month I get access to 10 more photographs, and that really builds up over time. So whether you are able to do a webinar, whether you are designing e-learning, whether you just want a photograph to sort of like get people in the mood around, it's important that we have that variety. And we also have a commercial license for those of us that are business owners. And I think most people's dialing in will either be a business owner or a corporate employee. So really key that we're doing it right and that we are also investing. And the nice thing about Adobe Stock is that it doesn't cost too much every month in order to do it. So now that you've got an idea of what results or sort of what impression you want, it's really key that we get the group going. And what you can see in a very small way, I'll just try to bring it up a little bit here, is actually the interface of one of the programs that I run. Throughout the year, and this will continue into 2018, I run a program called the Learning Lab and Design Studio. It is a group for people doing group and teamwork. And I love it because we meet twice a month. There's a curriculum that every month has a different theme. They're broad enough. So this month we're into teen trends. Last month we talked about micro-learning. The month before that we looked at exercises. We look at something different every month, but there is a resource portal. And I'm drawing your attention here to the top, sort of like the iPad/tablet here. What I'm able to do is upload everything into a resource portal. So whether people can join us live, and there are committed individuals who have been there at 5 and 6 a.m. on a Friday morning, or whether people are only able to join us once a month, they can go online to this, it's called learninglabanddesignstudio.com. You can just go there to see the outside interface. But really, as we go to start thinking about getting the group going, what are the things we need to put in place? Not only the platform, but more importantly, like the people, connecting people. So if you've ever done any work with me or read my books, I'm really big on spending time, a little bit of time, before you get going with quick pre-calls. Maybe you prefer to do that vocally, that's my preference, or maybe you want to do a survey. You could use SurveyMonkey to do this, or just simply do it lower tech with an email. But ask people, you know, what's brought you here? What are you excited about? Why are they joining you for this program? What are their goals and what are their needs? And taking a little bit of time, and of course that's expansive. If you've got 4 people in a group, it'll take you an hour. Excuse me. If you've got 8 people in a group, 15 minutes a person, gives you 2 hours. It takes time, but it is well worth the wait. So while I mute myself to cough, please write down 3 questions you'd like to ask your group members pre-program. Take a sec. The nice thing about virtual is I'm not giving you my germs today. My guess is you've probably got a selection of the questions here on the list. And in fact, chapter 6 of the new book, excuse me, is all about preparing for blast off. So I will be referring to these tips as we go. And I'd like you to continue to think about who is your client and what's going to be important to them. Some group members love having a first call be all about, here's what we're going to do and here's what we're focusing on. Other group members want to jump right in. So getting to know people before you get going, really critical in building that trust and that connection. All right, so as my voice is coming back, I think another key thing that you're going to want to think about is materials. Like, have you even sent out the materials? And a quick rule of thumb, whether it's a worksheet, whether it's a hard copy, you want to make sure that you take a few minutes, build it into your calendar and send it out. My rule of thumb is a week before. I always want to get materials out a week in advance. It gives me sort of like a mental moment to say, hey, it's a week in advance. I know for virtual programs, sometimes I get upwards of 75% of my registrations in the last week before the program. So it really is in some ways me putting a stake in the ground, knowing that yes, every Monday at 11:30, this is going to be my time with a group. You will want to make sure that you have enough ample time to store materials. Excuse me, might need to get you to write something down in a moment. To store materials as well. And when I say stored, like in some ways it's sort of fun. Like we don't operate in a bricks and mortar world for a lot of virtual things. We don't have the big old closets that we used to have, but you do want to think about a storage system. And your storage system is your laptop. It is your digital files, your backup. So like, are you storing things? Are you securing things? How are you going to get them to people? Is it all at once? Or is it what we call a drip format? And going back to the Learning Lab and Design Studio, the nice thing about that platform, which is hosted on Teachable, is that people can go and get the material all at once. In some programs, when we're meeting for 5 or 6 weeks, I drip it out. So I will send an email with the materials for the next week. For ongoing longer groups, I post things or I upload them into the cloud through our Teachable site so that people can just simply go there and access it. I don't follow up with a follow-up email because the group is it's not a group that I have that regular communication with. But you will want to think about, what is this program? Is it high touch or is it low touch? Where can people go? Can they access it? And that's just one of many considerations, because you will always want to have a backup copy and know where it is. So imagine a call like this, it's 11:25 and all of a sudden your computer system goes down. You have people coming. Where do you go? You will want to make sure, one, that you have a backup laptop and or even backup files of that presentation. Now, do I do this every day? Not always. I try to always have a backup laptop that I can quickly set up and be here on Zoom or be wherever I need to be. But for high scale presentations, definitely, I always have a copy on a disk. It's something I mentally do actually, it's one of the first things I'll do the day that I'm virtually speaking. As I come into the office in the morning, I'll look through my schedule, see what presentations I have, especially ones that are a one-off where, it's really critical that I'm there. So know where your backup copy is, where is it, and also build in time, if you can, for helping people get to places. So keep an eye on your email if it's feasible. If it's not, sometimes it's a little easier to do that than not. Now, by the time you're prepping for a program, you probably have an idea of what size is the group. And what you see here on your screen is a cartoon from the Team 365 blog, and it's actually one that shows up in the new book. This is Jo, who's a new team leader, and she spends her life virtual. This is part of her team. It's a team of 5, but a team of 5 is a beautiful size to be working with. It allows you to do breakouts. It allows you to be in larger group discussion. You will really want to think about the size of the group, because having 2 people on a call or 5 people on a call, very different than having 300 people on a call. Last month, I had over 325 people on a call, and we were still getting feedback at the end saying this was like one of the best webinars I've attended with this association. And that's because I built in reflection points, chat points. We couldn't do breakouts, but a lot of interactivity so that people, like you're doing already in the first sort of 15 minutes, writing things down, thinking about things. On Zoom, normally we don't have polls, but if you have larger groups, you want to make sure that you have polls set up. So what I'm going to invite you to do right now, if you have annotation, please go to your annotation bar and just on the screen mark up, so far in this presentation, what's the one thing you need to be thinking about in your next program, in the program that you're going to be launching next year, next fall, this fall. What is the one thing you need to be thinking about? And annotation on Zoom is usually found in a keyboard below. It's either options or it's going to be a little pen. If you want to grab that right now or grab chat, just to let me know and also to engage you to think about what's the one thing you want to keep an eye on. Okay, and while we're doing that, we've got someone else joining us. Welcome. We're recording our call, so just sit back and relax. And we're videoing, so Lisa, you can stay on, you can stay off your call. But we're just talking about things to consider as you're getting going in the size of the group. And I just invited people to annotate and let me know. Now, another thing that's really critical with prepping for calls, which is really the focus of today, it's like, helping you get on the mark, and as I call in chapter 6, preparing for blast off, is creating a roadmap. So going back to what is the thing you need to do, helping folks join in as I begin. Absolutely. And there's like a lot of moving parts of your call. If we use this roadmap, excuse me, as I cough again, if we use this roadmap, it's almost like the start of the road, if we consider this little area down here to point 1 as maybe the first 5 or so minutes. If you have a new group, it's going to take you some time to get to point 1 where you actually have everyone on board and everyone ready to go. You will want to know how you need to scale the roadmap of your call within the time you have. Because one of the things that just isn't really feasible in happening is going longer. Chances are, just as we have today, I know for a fact that we have people in 4 different geographic locations, 4 very different time zones of the day. Some people moving towards lunchtime, others moving into the middle of the night. And so 30 minutes needs to be 30 minutes. It's really important that you mentally think through your roadmap of your call and think about what areas need to get squished or compressed if things are taking longer. Now, I like to use a lot of charts and, tables. And if you've taken any work with me, you can refer back or think back to the design matrix tool. But some people like to get a little bit more metaphorical and actually use a structure like this, the roadmap, as a just as sort of their indicator. If you had a 60-minute call, where do you want to be by maybe 5 minutes in? Okay, point 2 is going to be 20 minutes into the call. Point 3 is another 15 minutes after that, 35 minutes. And then point 4, that's 50 minutes, and that's where I need to be in order to take any questions. Consider where you want to be at different stages, and you'll think about your main points, your engagement points, any pause and next steps. And if this is one of the first effective virtual conversations calls that you jumped in on, do check out the call that I did in August of 2017 on engagement points. You want to get people to be thinking things, writing things down much more frequently than we do in the in-person space. So, what will success look like? Again, going back to your own idea, I'd like you to jot down, we talked earlier about, excuse me, what's the environment you want to create. But now I'd like you to think of that same program and think about the 3 adjectives that will describe what's the end result you're aiming for. Okay, so thank you to whoever cleared the annotation. You saved me a token. In your own page of notes, not on our screen, but on your own page of notes, take 20 seconds right now to note for yourself, what will success look like? How will you know this virtual call has been successful for your participants? Or in other words, what are the end results you are aiming for? Take 20 seconds to note that for yourself. Our success factors really will shape everything from the graphics we use through to how often do we engage with people, etc. And this really brings us part and parcel to another consideration on that pre-programmed checklist. Again, that's the frame, is what is the platform you're going to be using? Are there any issues to note? Are there any special access codes you need? So about a year ago, 2 years ago, I did a series of posts. They're different virtual facilitation tips. You can find them at yet another website, facilitationskillsintensive.com. And you'll also find them at the Teams 365 blog. But the tip number 8 is choose the platform that best fits your content, your purpose, and your interactivity. Sometimes we have influence over the platforms that are used. Other times we don't. But we really do want to make sure that we are choosing the platform that is the best one for purpose, for content, and interactivity. And anyone with questions after today's call around platform, do check out the earlier call I did here on the community calls from August of this year. Notes at the end, we'll see where that is. Another key thing to have in mind, and I know this is a lot of different things, but you might choose to put things in a notebook. So I have a new group starting this afternoon. I've got a brand new notebook somewhere on my desk, but just put their contact details in it. So here we go. Here's the brand new notebook. Again, I won't show you the page, but just, you want to have your contact details for your group, phone number, and email address, because Murphy's Law will happen and all of a sudden you'll be on the line, systems will go down. You want to have a quick way to get in touch with people. That goes hand in hand with having your backup. The other thing that I would say is that there are always something else. And as much as what we've taken from today's calls on page 219 of Effective Virtual Conversations, there are always a myriad of other things you'll want to consider before you get going. I'd like to invite you right now, using annotation or chat, just to let us know beyond things like, do you have a backup? What is your roadmap? What's the environment you want to create? What else do you think you're going to need to think about as you go to do your own group or team or individual virtual call? Just take a moment to note anything else for yourself that you would put on your checklist. One that we haven't explored today, um, and I'll just throw it out here, is the ways of working. So most of you would know that in my work as a coach, really important that we create some group agreements. And that's something you're going to want to speak to very early on, not only just on your first call, but like it's something you can warm people up to, asking them what to, what they want and what they need in terms of having a positive learning environment. It's a small point, but a really key point in creating some safety. And we've got another excellent point, evaluation, dealing with technical difficulties in the middle of a call. Okay, so technical difficulties, and thank you for the acknowledgement that I do this so well. Technical difficulties will inevitably happen. And this is in part, I think, confidence in your own ability to navigate and provide clear instruction on, if you're not seeing someone, this is what you can do. Or if annotation isn't working, think chat. We always want to think in a contingency line, but we also want to make sure we understand the platform. And we only are able to do that through practice. So before you go to launch your own programming virtually, do think about what's going to help you get very comfortable with these different elements. Many of the platforms, whether it's a WebEx or a Zoom or whatever, you can go on by yourself, or you can invite friends and family to just help you explore it. There are also, of course, different tutorials, but I think, for some of us, we see a tutorial, but we want to practice it as well. And that's where I think if you have a group of friends, colleagues, loved ones who will give you 5 minutes of their time, it can be really valuable so that you can understand, how do I switch between screen sharing or bring something else up? This is why I love, things like Zoom. It really makes it very easy, or easier than some of the other platforms as a facilitator, because there's a lot of things going on. Technical, participant-wise, another thing that we haven't talked about but is so important on all of our work is evaluation. How are you, also bringing it back to pre-program, are you doing a pre-program checkpoint or benchmark? Are you giving people a list of the skills that maybe they're going to be learning in your work together? Are you having them self-assess where they are now, so that you're able to look at where you might go at the, or where they go at the end of a program? Are you putting into place any measurements that need to be explored, looked at, etc.? So there's a lot of things to be keeping in mind, but hopefully it's fun. There are always the skills. And in fact, this is another one of our cartoon characters from the new book. So you met Joe. This is Jane. Maybe I've got them reversed. But anyway, she is a virtual facilitator. Notice all of these skills that are just in front of her. She's a new virtual facilitator. So she knows she needs to be tech savvy, work on her feet, builds connection, well-read, comfortable in not being able to see, because that's a really big one. We need to also make sure that we are optimistic to a certain extent. I would say optimistic in the fact that it's going to work. The technology is going to work. Maybe not always optimistic in the outcome, because we want to meet groups and teams where they're at, but we also want to be very comfortable in being a multitasker. So lean into your own skills is still up there. Things like using intuition, being a good troubleshooter, being a great host. These are things that are really key skills, regardless of if you are running a one-off webinar or you are actually doing a series of virtual calls. There's always learning to be done. And I'm hoping that just out of our quick time today, that you've got a couple of next steps you'd like to commit to for yourself. So this is not an annotation, although you can share it with us, but I just wanted to give you a pause point to think about what are your next steps for your work. If there was one thing you want to put attention around in the next week or the next couple of months, for example, before the end of the year, what are your next steps going to be? Take a moment to note those. And also, we're going to go to a question because we have a moment. So take a moment for your next steps. Now, great question that's come up. How do you deal with the person who never got on and is angry or disappointed? Such a great question. So here's how, in programs that you control, i.e. not a fora like this. So a fora like this, the stakes are higher. You know, I know one of you was like, oh, I don't know how to get on the call. And I was on another group call, so all I could do was send the link. You know, would have loved to have been able to pick up the phone and say, here's how to do it, blah, blah, blah. Not always feasible. If you are hosting a program on a certain platform, always meet people there for the pre-program. So if you're kicking off with a 6-week session, do your pre-calls on the platform so they know how to get on. So the chances are reduced that there's a possibility that they're not going to get on. If they are angry or disappointed, reassure them you've got a recording. You might even, if it's appropriate, offer to stay on the line, answer the questions, or meet with them again if it's appropriate. Again, there's so much variability here, but I think in the virtual space, we have an upcoming call on this. So I'll just go to that, you know, just go to our next little calls here. Tricky issues in the virtual realm is next week, Monday. And I will be talking about some of these situations where what do you do? What do you do if someone can't get on? Well, the challenge of the mindset in the virtual space is, okay, so the mindset is it's not going to work, right? That is probably the belief system we need to adopt. And we need to help our group members also do some troubleshooting. There may be instances where it's just not feasible for people to get on. So you can do what you can by meeting people on it before you start the program. You may also have multiple instructions. One reason why I like Zoom is because in the full-blown example or invitation, you can not only Zoom in by computer, but you can also phone in. That gives people options. And once they have options, if they can't get on their computer, they're going to get on by the phone. So it automatically puts people to a greater sort of release. Now, earlier today, someone was asking, you know, what do you have upcoming related to this topic? So I'm going to pull back here. I've already talked a little bit about Learning Lab and Design Studio. That's an annual group that meets twice a month. Also, the Virtual Facilitation Essentials is a 5-week program. If any of you have taken Group Coaching Essentials, it's sort of comparable. All of these programs are listed, except for Learning Lab and Design Studio, over at virtualfacilitation.com. And got to get the website right. Effectivevirtualconversations.com. My cold is now kicking into its full extent. It's right there at the bottom of your screen. Effectivevirtualconversations.com. Everything is there. Some programs are still listed over at Group Coaching Essentials if it's related to group coaching. If you're hungry for more, join me either next week, same time, same Zoom line for Tricky Issues. And if you are hungry for more reading, definitely pick up a copy of the book. If you haven't picked it up yet, you can go to Amazon. Amazon is probably the easiest order fulfillment place anywhere. You can also join me for one of those programs or take a look at the Teams 365 blog. So I've got it here on the screen, Teams 365 blog at our main site, potentialsrealized.com. This fall, I'm doing a Tuesday and Wednesday series on different virtual and remote team exercises. So this week, tomorrow, we're going to be looking at how do you help virtual teams have better feedback conversations. This week, we're going to be looking at, last week we looked at how do you help a virtual team have a difficult conversation. So slightly different lens. And there's just so much to do that is in this space that I think increasingly more and more people are jumping into. and still not a lot of resources. So as always, I want to thank you for your time today. If anyone would like to share their next step, I'd love to hear that, because it's all about helping our clients create a bullet plan. And this is just another quick way, right? And we've used a couple of different techniques. The post-it notes, this is a 3 bullet point that you might include at the end, but just getting people to naturally think about what are your next steps. If anyone would like to share those with us right now, great. And if not, I hope that you'll come back and join us next Monday, same time, same Zoom line, for another 30 minutes on tricky issues. So with that, be well, everyone. Have a great day. Let us know in the chat what your next step is. And I want to say thank you for joining us. Be well. And ooh, one of us has said free seminar on Thursday and group coaching in January. Well, love it. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to stop our share, stop our recording. Want to wish you a fantastic night or day, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks for joining us today. See you.